Two, one. Welcome back, Beans Army, to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. We're going to dip into Matt's territory today because what we have in store for you is we're going to be giving you all some hot takes across college football and college basketball. And how we're going to grade these hot takes is on a scale using peppers. And Matt, I'm going to be completely honest. I did more research about peppers than I did any of the other information that I researched about college sports. So, Matt, this is your territory. Kind of explain the thought process for coming up with this idea.
Okay, well, Les, you're going to kill me because I thought the pepper
I
thing was
highly doubt that, but okay.
because. Well, I'm going to start by saying the pepper thing was just an idea I had because I know there's some show on the internet people like where people eat like hot wings or something. I don't know what it's called. I've just seen clips of it. Hell, Donald Duck was on it. I know that much. But I was also I went to Roosters, which is for those of you who may not have one near you. It's your typical Buffalo Wild Wings type wing joint with lots of food. And I was just looking at the scale of like the various flavors of sauces, and I was like, you know what? We could do that for a show. But where Les is going to kill me is I thought that Les like knew more about wing sauces than I did.
Wait,
So
wait, 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 wait. You did wing sauces?
see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I did peppers.
So it was like Les did peppers. I think he knows more about this stuff than I do. What can I do that's different? So then I decided I was going to use the scale that scientists use to determine how painful an insect's bite or sting is. So that way we could be a little bit different.
Is that why you're the Sting?
Yes,
Okay, fair enough. I dig
because
it.
they wouldn't let me paint my face. So it's like Les is going to use like the various peppers. So like for those of you not familiar, you've got your jalapeno, you've got your habanero, you've got your pepper X, your ghost peppers. If you're a fan of The Simpsons, the Guatemalan insanity pepper. So Les is going to use peppers. I was going to use peppers, and I was like, no, we need to give them something a little bit different. So I'm going to be using the Star Sting Pain Scale, which is a very cool name, which is how people rank the bites and stings of various insects throughout the world. But we're going to be grading each other. Well, we've come up with some hot takes, and we're going to assign them a scale. So for less, I don't know what the. I think that like a jalapeno is probably the lower end of the scale, and and Pepper X is one of the top ones. Oh, really?
So jalapeno is kind of in the middle
Well,
from what I found on my research.
I like it that I'm making less research.
I am the pepper master now.
Les is going to invite me to all his chili cook-offs, and I'm here for it.
Fair
Whereas
enough.
on my scale, like the lower end of my scale will be like a fire ant. You guys know what fire ants are, right? And the upper level would be like a tarantula hawk, which is very scary. Don't look it up unless you want to have nightmares.
That just sounds terrifying.
It is, and if you knew what they did to those tarantulas, you'd be even more terrified. So, without
Speaking of
further,
insects, you know what I learned this week?
what
This
did you
weekend?
learn?
I learned that in Morocco there are these spiders that do cartwheels.
Yes, they do. They go down the dunes like that. It's a very interesting means of locomotion.
You say interesting, I say terrifying. I don't
No,
like spiders. Never have.
spiders are kind of cool. I mean, I've always had a thing. I had a tarantula for a while, so I mean, I've always enjoyed spiders. I love jumping spiders. Those little guys can't don't hurt a fly. They're really cute. Tarantulas are fine. Now, camel spiders, I don't want to encounter ever. Those solifuge, I think, is their scientific name. And you'd never. They're not even technically a spider, but you do not want to encounter one. They just look nasty and they are nasty.
You had a tarantula?
Yeah, her name was Janice.
I'm so glad you didn't bring that thing around me. Would have
No,
killed it.
I had her when I was in high school. She passed away because our house was
Janice?
too cold, I think. I really enjoyed having her around, though. She was a Mexican red knee.
I don't know what that is. I just know she's a tarantula, and I already
A
don't like
Mexican red knee, it's just what it says. They have like little tufts of like red fur on their knee area. And
my
a
brother
tarantula,
had a snake, and that was bad enough.
well, believe it or not, a tarantula's main line of defense actually isn't their fangs. They fling their hairs at you, and they hurt.
Ugh.
I know, it's really cool.
Just sounds ugh.
What is this podcast about again?
It went from peppers to spiders, and now we're somehow going to gravitate back to college sports. So, who is giving the first hot take before we run out of time?
Leslie, why don't you go first? Why don't you go first?
So I ask you, all right, my first question for you, for how would you rate this hot take, is that Billy Napier's job is actually very secure at Florida. What are your thoughts?
Les, on a scale, like I said, going on the scale of 1 to 4, I'm going to give that a 3.0 that goes with the mighty Velvet Ant. And, there will be a pop quiz on this afterwards, which means I think that's pretty hot. I mean, Florida has done pretty well given the schedule, how we thought things were going to go this year. They do come off a big win against LSU. They are still Florida. But still, there's something about the Billy Napier era when they announced that extension that didn't sound right with fans. If you thought the leash was short before, it's on choke chain right now because I can't imagine, even if the schedule evens up next year, any loss that Florida takes is going to be accepted very well within the community. So I'm going to give that a 3.0 to go with the Velvet Ant. And now here's your pop quiz, Les. Is a velvet ant an ant? True or false?
Given the nature of this podcast, I'm going to say false.
You are correct. A velvet ant is actually a species of wasp
Do you know why I guessed that?
because you know my inner workings so well.
Yes. And I remember the episode where we were talking about TCU and you went on this rant about how horned frogs are actually lizards.
It's true. They are lizards.
I never doubted for a second, my friend. And I will, and back to Billy Napier before we move on to the next topic. It does one thing he does have going for him is that he's able to stick around for the time being and grow with this good freshman class that he has there currently. So that is one thing he does have going for him that I do wish to point out before we move on.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think are we trying to convince each other of the takes, or are we just laying them out and letting the other one talk? Because we
I
can do a
just
little
want
bit like,
I just wanted to complete a thought process. We
okay,
can do whatever. It's our show, brother.
all right. Well, Les, I'm going to convince you of this hot take, which our first one for me is the Big East, our favorite basketball conference, will only send 4 teams to the NCAA tournament come March. Now, at first, you may be thinking that's not much of a take at all, but I saw people who were predicting we would have between 6, maybe even 7 out of a 10-team conference get in. But from the early season results, we've seen Villanova absolutely fall off the face of the planet. They have losses to Virginia, and we all know what's going on there. They've got losses to St. Joseph's, and they've got losses to Columbia to go with the seemingly flailing Kyle Neptune era. So they were a team that was supposed to improve that doesn't appear to be improving. Seton Hall is in a world of hurt right now because they have lost to Hofstra and Fordham at home and are currently being beaten by VCU, but VCU, they're VCU. That's another team that was supposed to overperform. Now I know that we all love Creighton. We've seen what UConn can do. We saw what Marquette can do. My God, destroying Purdue. And I think that St. John's got a pretty good win in convincing fashion over a New Mexico team. But even outside of that, Butler lost to Austin Peay. Georgetown's had a couple injury concerns. And DePaul, in spite of the fact they're 5-0, is still DePaul. So I think the people who are predicting that there would be between 5 or 6 teams from the Big East making it in, I don't even trust Providence at this point. We're a little overstated, and when we get to the NCAA tournament, we're going to have the Big Four and no other representatives of the Big East in the NCAA tournament.
Do I go now?
Yeah, give me your pepper.
Okay. So I'm still gonna grade this as a chili pepper, which is hot. And the reason I say that is because you have three givens, UConn, Creighton, Marquette. We all know they're gonna make the NCAA tournament. Then you have teams like St. John's, Xavier, who I still think have a pretty decent shot at making the NCAA tournament. But ultimately, what this boils down to, if the number is four and we already have three givens, given the reputation of how tough the Big East Conference is, we've seen in recent years. And not to foreshadow a little bit, but I feel like this conversation could come up in a later topic, but that's neither here nor there. We know how the committee loves to favor these tough conferences. So that being said, I'm going to still give this a hot grade, a chili pepper grade, because I think the Big East will at least get four, if not more. Hey, that kind of rhymes. I should be a
I
rapper.
like that. You did well with that.
And yeah, so I'm going to give this a chili pepper hot grade. I think the Big East does at least four, if not more. Bars by less.
Oh, man, then we got a rap album breaking out. All right,
Welcome.
let's. So Les, now it's time for your second take, which
Yeah, put
I'm
my
gonna
notes. I've done that. And this take is going to hit Matt very close to home because even though he often calls himself a college football free agent, we all know deep down he does love his IU Hoosiers, whether he wants to admit it or not. It's kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? Conditional love, if we must say.
it's a
He
love
loves
hate
a lot
relationship.
right now because they are 10 and 0 on the season. And a big part of why they're 10 and 0 in the season is because of the great coaching job that Kurt Signetti has done in his first season with the Hoosiers. And as you all who follow college football know, he just recently signed an extension. And my take for Matt is that Kurt Signetti will finish his extension with IU. Matt, go take it away.
I am gonna give that prediction the upper end of the 2 scale out of 4, which goes along with the yellow jacket level. Ironically enough, there are no yellow jackets in the Big Ten, but there are in college sports. But I'm gonna give that an upper end of the 2 on this scale because Kurt Signetti, I think he's just built kind of different. I know that's like a cliche term to use, but it's like we were joking about earlier when a guy comes to his first press conference at IU as the football coach and says, "Yeah, Purdue sucks, but so do Ohio State and Michigan." It's kind of like a maybe this guy just really likes beating people type thing. And we've seen that he's signed that extension. This is the first 10-0 start in Indiana history. And we can't forget, and I don't mean to sound ageist here, but the dude is 63 years old. He's not like a young, hot prospect. He's not like Sean McVay or anything. This, you're going up against Father Time, and they say it's undefeated. There will come a point where you don't understand the connection between you and the players isn't the same, or your health catches up with you. And I don't want that to happen, but that's just life. So when you're old, you always have like this chip on your shoulder, whether you put it there or not. You're a guy who just made it very clear you're built different, and you've proven now that even against what you know is a bit of a soft schedule, I can't lie. I'm not going to mince it. It's not like Indiana played Oregon and USC in back-to-back weeks in addition to who they play, but those are still games that Indiana usually doesn't win. So you've proven that you can win here. You're a little bit up there. The fans have fallen in love with you. They're even bringing back Marlboro themed T-shirts for you. I don't think leaving is going to be as simple as it seemed like it was 3 weeks ago when I was convinced this guy was getting poached by Florida already. But still, this is college football, this is college sports, and we all know that money talks first and foremost. And if it can lure Brian Kelly out of Notre Dame, it can probably lure Kurt Signetti out of Indiana and into the SEC. With that being said, I'm giving this a yellow jacket, a tire end on a 2, let's call it a 2.5 out of 4 on the Matt Stinging take tail. Blah, 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 blah.
That's a mouthful. And
Is
just to
it?
complete a thought, we do kind of specialize in what goes on in the off season of college sports on this podcast. That's not all we cover, but it is a lot of what we cover on this podcast. And we know once coaches start getting fired and coaches start getting into the hiring talks that every big name school is gonna name Kurt Signetti. I mean, it's gonna be the point where you just say this guy's name 3 times like Beetlejuice and he pops up and says, "Google me." So
That's a good one.
I like it. But
I like
anyways,
that.
yeah, that is what inspired that take for Matt. So now I think it's time for me to give another pepper out there.
Yes, it is. Wait, oh, it's my turn. That's right.
Yeah.
I forgot that. But I got
It's
mixed
your
up.
idea, Matthew. Come on
I
now.
know, I know. I just got the order mixed up. Now here's a fun one for you, Les, because it not only involves college, but we get a little bit NFL here, which is that Dion and Shadur Sanders will not be at Colorado next year, nor will they be in college because they will both be playing for and coaching for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now let me explain this thought process here. We know that Dion Sanders, in addition to being a coach, is also basically his children's agent. We know that the Dallas Cowboys would probably be the most likely place for him to go, but they have a thing called Dak Prescott and a Super Bowl winning coach in Mike McCarthy that Jerry Jones apparently, gave too much information to, and now he has blackmail, so he's sticking around. But what we also know is that we saw Shadur Sanders tweet about the Las Vegas Raiders. They do have Brock Bowers. They aren't a big market fancy arena team. And they have Gardner Minshew, who you can send to free agency, and Antonio Pierce, who a guy I like, but could easily be returned to a spot as defensive coordinator if you bring on Deion Sanders. And we know he wants to control most aspects of his son's career, for better or worse. And we know he has a list of teams. Why not bypass both by letting Deion Sanders coach his own child in the NFL? And where better than in Las Vegas, home of the Raiders?
And if you thought that narrative was fun, then you're going to love my answer because I'm going to give this an Anaheim pepper, and which is
Woo!
also very hot, and I'm going to stick those Anaheim peppers right smack dab on top of my precision pass burger. Look, the hot part about this for me is not that Shadur Sanders could be playing for the Raiders because that's a very, very strong possibility. That would almost be like a banana pepper if that was the take itself. But when you include Coach Prime, who has also been on record stating that he has no interest in coaching the NFL, he would rather develop guys and be a teacher than rather be like an NFL head coach. But also the fact that he is still recruiting at a high level, as we just saw today with the commitment of Julian Lewis, who got him to flip from USC. That clearly shows that they know something that he's going to be sticking around for a while. So that is why I give this take an Anaheim pepper, which is ironically kind of cool with a little West Coast theme we got going on right there. The
I like
Vegas rate, the Anaheim peppers.
we
Dig
didn't
it.
plan this, but we knew what we wanted, and I love that about us.
We're always in sync, whether we want to be or not. We're like brothers, only closer.
Closer.
Bringing back the SpongeBob references.
There's never a bad time for SpongeBob references.
There is not.
All right, Les, give me your third take because let me tell you something. I think you're going to enjoy this one.
I think I will because the take is Purdue is better with Zach Edey. And I do want to preface for the fans listening that I did make this take before they absolutely got dog walked by Marquette. But, Zach Edey, obviously a great player. He's a two-time Naismith Player of the Year, top 15 pick, actually playing very well for the Memphis Grizzlies right now. However, when they beat Alabama, which is kind of what inspired this take, I noticed that they played a lot like how I predicted in the preseason they were going to play, and that is more up tempo and a much faster pace. So that's what inspired this take. Does that make them better? That is for Matt to decide. Because where do you grade this take of Purdue being better without Zach Edey?
This take gets the bullet ant take, which is a 4.0 plus out of 4 on the Sting scale. And you know what? To make it even better, there is a tribe located in Brazil who uses the bullet ant as a form of right for young men in their village. And what they do is they stick their hand in this glove full of sedated bullet ants that eventually wake up very unhappy and just sting the hell out of them for like 5 to 10 minutes. And it's a very painful experience. Like I said, we're talking about 4.0 in terms of pain. And you know what? That's what Purdue's done to themselves. They've given themselves not a glove, but a gauntlet. And let me tell you, they did beat Alabama. They got destroyed by Purdue. They're going to play NC State and Texas A&M and Auburn later in this year. And those are games, and to credit to them, that's what you get when you play Zach. Those are the kind of games you get when you want to prove your team's good. But they're in no way are they better without Zach Edey, especially when their Zach Edey replacement has a broken tibia and he's gone. I hate that for the kid, but still. It's going to be a really interesting ride to see what Purdue does, but I don't think they're better without Zach Edey. I do like the way they're playing, and I do acknowledge that they beat Alabama pretty handily. But I don't really see them being better without Zach Edey because there's just something about a two-time player of the year, and we could get into that whole narrative again about, oh, well, it's easy when you get all those foul calls. And you know what? It is. It is. I'm not going to lie. When you have a 7'4" guy who you can just lob it into and he gets fouled with an and one, offense is a lot easier. You don't have to work for it as much, especially if they give him a call, which, let's be honest, you're 7'4". You're going to get calls. So I don't think they're better. I still think they're quite good, but they're in no way better. I mean, especially since we've seen that they're kind of lacking it. I mean, they've got Caleb First, he's pretty good. They've got Kaufman Wren, who's really impressed me so far this year. I like the way they're playing more ball on the perimeter, but they have some issues with depth, and they don't seem as intimidating without Zach Edey. So I'm giving that but they've get and not to mention they've given themselves, like I said, a bullet ant style gauntlet with the schedule they're going to play. So I mean, there are going to be times where they're going to beat a good team, and there will be times when they get like boat raced like they did against Marquette. It's just basketball. But I think the boat racing is gonna. I don't think the wins are going to be as close as they used to be, and are they're going to be as big as they used to be. And I think the losses are going to be a little less close, and that's just what you get when you're trying to replace a two-time player of the year. So that's getting a 4.0. That's a bullet ant take for me. That's hot and spicy on my scale.
Now it is time for the pepper scale for your next take.
I'm ready for this.
Well, that's you're
All
giving
right,
me the
this one's going to be a little bit weird because I'm excited to hear. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. Brian Kelly, he is not going to be the head coach at USC when we do something like this time.
LSU.
LSU, maybe that's where he's going to end up. USC, it's a premonition.
There was a weird dynamic because we thought Lincoln Riley was going to go to LSU, then he went to USC, and then Brian Kelly went to LSU. Yeah, I got you. I knew where your thought. I
Brian
knew your.
Kelly is not going to be the LSU head coach this time next year.
So before we got on this podcast, or rather, when I was making my notes for this podcast this week, I initially gave this a jalapeno pepper, which is still kind of hot, but not really too bad. Still kind of mild at the same time. But given the events that literally just happened right before we hopped on the show, as college football fans know, given preseason expectations, LSU has in a way kind of underperformed. And that's kind of a red flag as it is. But now, with the latest development that Michigan was successful in flipping Bryce Underwood to decommit from LSU and recommit to the Michigan Wolverines, now I think that very anticlimactic answer, that hot seat just got a little hotter. But at the same, so now I'm going to upgrade this to a bell pepper, which is not so hot after all, still
Yeah,
kind of mild. So I think it's very believable. The only thing that, keeps this take to have a little bit of kick to it is that he does have two 10-win seasons in the last 3 years and a Heisman Trophy winner under his belt. But at the end of the day, LSU is a very storied program. Expectations are high, not only from that program, but that conference. So I'm going to rate this a bell pepper.
I would agree with that. And to be honest, I was going to talk about that kid who played quarterback, but I got so mixed up I couldn't remember the kid's name.
It
I
is
was like,
Bryce.
Bryce. I kept thinking Bryce Jones, who's a local meteorologist. I'm like, that's not right.
That is the
That's
biggest
not.
Bryce Jones has ever gotten.
Yeah, that's not right. So anyway, that was mine. So Les, what's your fourth take for me to judge on the scale of stings to what stings and whatnot?
In years past, the Heisman Trophy has been referred to as a quarterback award. But this year, given the performances of two-way superstar Travis Hunter and absolute Michael Myers, if you will, and Ashton Genty, who I have been high on this podcast for quite some time now. I don't know if you all knew that or not, but um, those guys are the top two front runners for the Heisman Trophy this year, both non-quarterbacks. That being said, is this the most entertaining Heisman Trophy race in recent memory?
Les, I hate to do this to you, but this one's getting a 1.5 for me out of 4, which is goes with the cicada killer, which is another form of interesting wasp. But the reason why I say that is I feel like it's the same problem I complained last year about. It seems like it's been a problem with the last few Heisman races. Is that these players are fantastic. I'm not denying that. They've been entertaining. I like that. But nobody really has any moments anymore. Aston Genty's is just like a whole body of work over time. Travis Hunter's is because he's a two-way player. And the last time we had a conversation like this, it was 1998, and it was very, very interesting. But I don't know if it's because of the media clout or the fact no one's seemingly covering this because it seems like we've lost all of our major networks to either being a Big Ten homer or an SEC homer. That we really don't get these guys really just aren't covered, and that's not Ashton Genty's fault. I know Boise State's in the Mountain West, soon to be Pac-12 team, but at the same, it's just hard to get behind them because none of these dudes really have like a moment that stands out in time. It's not like when Johnny Manziel and Baker Mayfield. Oh my God, I sound like an old man. It's not like when those guys were doing it and they had that one moment where you're like, oh, yep, that's the guy. Same thing with like Jane Daniels last year. Now, when I say that, people are like, "Are you?" I'm not debasing the players at all. They're great players. I think that this is going to be a very memorable Heisman race. But for some reason, the narratives just aren't hooking me like they used to. And I know that's weird because both these teams are very much in contention for a playoff spot, but it's just not hooking me. So I'm giving that a 1.5 out of 4.
Fair enough. Time to move on to the next take.
All right, Les, here's one for you. The University of Kentucky Wildcats are going to win the SEC regular season, and they're going to win the SEC tournament title in Mark Pope's first year as the head coach. How hot of a take would you deem that one?
Honestly, I'm gonna go again with the bell pepper here because I don't think it's that hot of a take. UK and Alabama look like the two best teams in the SEC. Honestly, Kentucky looks like the best team in the SEC right now. Um, the conference tourney is the only thing that makes me a little bit hesitant because anything can happen in that. Team can get hot for a weekend, yada yada yada. So that's the only thing that really keeps us kind of take kicking a little bit. But
Right.
no, Kentucky, Mark Pope, all credit to him for the job that he's been able to come in and do like in such a short period of time. Recruit or not even recruit. Well, I guess recruit. Hit the
Seems like he
portal,
knows basketball.
yeah, hit the portal, bring in all these new guys and get them to buy in, really establish these team bonding exercises to get them close in such a short period of time. And yet, he's got them really bought in. And just with like the offensive schemes they run, I hate to do this because y'all know I do not like Kentucky in the slightest. And especially I do not like Big Blue Nation, but this Kentucky team's fun to watch. And I'm not saying that just because they beat my Blue Devils. They're legit, period. Um, and yeah, so I mean, they so far this early season look like the best team in the SEC. Honestly, look convincingly to be a top five team in college basketball. So no, I don't think this is that hot of a take at all.
I would agree with that because it's like you said, there are a lot of good teams. I feel like we're all sleeping on Auburn though. Auburn is the one team
Not Auburn's nice.
that I feel like could
Right,
come
I
up
should
and
have said that
ruin
though.
the prediction.
Auburn is really good.
If it makes you feel any better, I totally forgot Xavier was in the Big East when you mentioned that earlier too. So I'm like, shit, I forgot about
We
Xavier.
had a Xavier player on the podcast. Come on now.
I know, but it's the holiday season. My mind is thinking of apple cider and turkeys right now. I'm not thinking about the college basketball just yet. We got to make it the feast week, and
Fair.
then my mind will become flooded with thoughts of basketball. But yeah, Auburn's the one team I think that we're all sleeping on that could scare me. I really like what Auburn does. But yeah, Kentucky against Duke, and I'm not going to shit on the Blue Devils because I know they're a good team too. They're going to win the ACC. I have no question in my mind. But the way they beat Duke was very impressive. I mean, they were down. It looked like it was going to be a blowout at points in the first half because they just couldn't stop. They just couldn't stop the bigs, and then they pulled it out. And in the SEC, it's a good conference, but you and I talked about how boring Arkansas looked. Alabama's proven that they can have weaknesses. Mark Sears is going through a rough patch. I hope he'll probably recover by the time conference play starts up. But, sometimes rough patches linger, but they've already taken an L. So, yeah, I'm really high on the Wildcats right now. The only team I'm afraid of is Auburn doing that. So, Les, it's time for you to present your fifth and final Pepper Challenge stinger.
And we're gonna have to speed through these because we just hit the 10-minute mark.
Oh, we
But
got this. We got this.
it seems like a broken record. It's the same story every year. Gonzaga begins the season as one of the best teams in college basketball. They have a tough non-conference schedule where they look really good. And then conference play hits. They don't play a good team for, 2 months at a time. Then the NCAA tournament happens, and they don't often go as far as some people think. However, with this take, is that I think if Gonzaga played a schedule that would be on par to someone like a UConn who's won back-to-back national championships, they would be as dominant as the Huskies right now. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Les, that to me is getting a 1.0 for like a fire ant out of 4 because you're absolutely right. Every year we do this with Gonzaga. They have a great team. They don't play anybody for a while, and we underseed them because they take a loss to St. Mary's along the way. And oh, what did they do last year when we all complained about them? They blew the doors off McNeese State, who was pretty good. They beat Kansas, who, while floundering, is still Kansas, and only floundered in the Sweet 16 when they ran into Zach Edey and the eventual runner-up Purdue Boilermakers. And so this year, to kind of put that narrative at bay, Gonzaga started the season by absolutely thumping. I mean, there's not even a proper onomatopoeia to describe what they did to the Baylor Bears, who we both think are a very good team. I mean, they destroyed them 101-63. Then follow that up with a big win against Arizona State, a team who I think is sneaky good. They've beaten San Diego State. Remember, they're usually one of the upper tier big mid major teams, and even then they're going to play Tucker DeVires in West Virginia. They're going to play those Kentucky Wildcats. They're going to play Gonzaga. They're going to play They're going to play Gonzaga, of course. They're going to play the aforementioned UConn Huskies, and they're going to play UCLA before they jump into that conference play. And to boot, they've got Washington State, who's sneaky good this year too. There is no doubt in my mind that Gonzaga, with the coach they have in Mark Few, with the players they've been able to get, if they played in the Big East, would be, they probably have a couple more losses, but they would still be one of the most dominant teams in the country because that's what a good program with a good coach can do. And Mark Few has been around a long, long time. I thought when the Jay Wright and the Tony Bennett things happened that he would be looking in the mirror thinking, maybe it's time. I don't think he is. I think he's adapting. I think their Gonzaga's only getting better. I would honestly think that if it hadn't been for that Pac-12 thing happening, they would be in the Big East very soon because they're just that caliber. So yeah, I'm giving that a lower score because I think you're absolutely spot on with this. This is a fire ant to me in terms of pain because when you're right, you're right. And
I'm
so
gonna
that brings me
I'm gonna
to
cherish this moment. Matt does
what?
not call me right often.
Well,
I'm
no,
cher-
he was. You're gonna have this on recording, I know, but yeah, you're right there. I mean, they'd be just as dominant,
well, of course it's on recording. We upload every video to the YouTube and Spotify channel.
for better or worse. Hey, at least we can hear each other this time.
It's all about perspective, right? I forgot that was our last episode. Like we're with you and me. I couldn't even hear. We had to like mime it out, and guess what we were saying?
We were pointing and having a good old time. And so, Les, do you have any thoughts you want to complete on that one? Or are you ready for my fifth one?
I think we should go to your fifth one, but I do have some thoughts real quick, not including that take, but I just want to say what we did with our last episode. I call that adaptation.
We are adapting to our environment and surviving. Survive in advance. And
Survive in advance. It all comes full circle.
it does. And speaking of surviving and advancing, we
Yes.
do have a college football tournament bracket this year for the 12-team tournament. And there has been already a bunch of questions about the nature of scheduling, seeding, why do losses in September matter more than losses now, yada, yada, yada. Which brings me to an interesting caveat, which is we know that the committee, especially if SMU or BYU win, aren't as fond of those two programs as they are some others. And so if they end up ranked below a certain team, that team, the group of five champion, they're the best group of five team, that team gets a top four playoff spot. So less. Boise State, because it's not this podcast, if we don't talk about Boise State multiple times, is going to secure that fourth seed in the college football playoff. How hot of a take are you going to give me for that one?
And I'm going to go with the hottest pepper known to man in Pepper X because literally what you just said. Because we all know how the committee is biased towards the bigger conferences, they're biased towards the strength of schedule. And for Boise State to not be in a power conference and their only game against a power conference opponent they lost, as good as Oregon is, it's still a loss. And as good as Boise State played Oregon, it's still a loss. We all know that the committee is going to find a way to put some other big name team ahead of them at that 4 spot. Now, if the take was Boise State will be in the college football playoff, I mean, this would be a bell pepper. They're going to make it because they're going to win out their schedule. They'll get the at-large bid. They got a Heisman finalist. For all the media rights and purposes, they're going to get into the college football playoff. But the key here is being top four. That's where I am hesitant on all accounts, and I got to give this a Pepper X rating for just being the hottest pepper known to man because there is no way the committee is going to allow a mid-major team to secure that top four position and get a bye. And you know what? If that were to happen, and if I was a Florida State fan, I would be pissed because we all know about that conundrum last year, how they go undefeated during the regular season, win their conference championship, and they get left out of the college football playoff to one loss Alabama. No Aaron Rodgers. It was not Texas that kept Florida State out. It was Alabama. Get it right. But yeah, if I was a Florida State fan and you let a non-power conference team with one loss get into that top four spot and knowing exactly what happened to you all last year, I would be pissed. I'd be doing that tomahawk chalk straight to my face. Just give self-inflicting so much pain here.
Go ahead and stick the flaming lance right into my stomach. Yeah.
Exactly. But before we do our patented into the podcast rant, of course, you know I got to say it. As always, like and subscribe to Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channels to get the latest updates and new content coming out. Be sure to follow the social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. That's at Less is More Sports. Also, be sure to follow the side quest on TikTok. That's at BeansDad018. And we got about 2 minutes left. So, what are we wrapping up our end of the podcast rants with?
You know what? I'm going to say it. The best way to get recruits is to name food after them.
I would agree. And
Malik
Julian
Renault's
Lewis,
thinking about leaving Indiana. Malik Renault burger. He's staying put. Julian Lewis wants to go to Colorado. Give him a burger. He's staying put.
I am fully
McDonald's
convinced that is why
All-American.
Mike Elko did not stay in Durham because our diner did not name a sandwich after him.
Exactly. Kurt Signetti's going to stay in Indiana. The Kurt burger. It's going to be a thing.
I think Signetti is going to have a carton of cigarettes named after him.
The Sig burger. You just put a bunch of tobacco on a hamburger.
That don't no
Tobacco
no.
leaves instead of
Gross.
lettuce, just like the pioneers intended.
That is gross. No.
I know it's gross. But
He's
yeah,
gonna
the
have
best
a carton of cigarettes named after him. A whole
there's
no, we'll have some random tobacco company come out of the woodwork and just name themselves after Kurt Signetti.
the Sig company. Every carton shaped like the IU logo.
The Google Me Sigs.
The Google Me Sigs. Oh my god. Pete, those would sell like hotcakes is the terrifying thing. The
In
Kurt,
Bloomington, especially, yes.
Kurt Signetti Zins. Are you kidding me?
As I got some Zen in my lip right now.
Just imagine that tastes like Google Me. I don't even know what that would taste like, but I'm sure it would be great. The Google Me flavor. It's a mystery.
Hey, just like them little frogs on Harry Potter. You don't know what flavor you're going to get.
Oh my god. That's a note to end on. Goodbye, everybody. Have a